The dust kicked up around Anna Mee's worn boots as she stood beside the last thing of value she owned in this world, a skinny brown cow that hadn't given good milk in months, and she knew if she didn't sell it today, there would be no money for food or the debt collector who'd promised to come back before sundown. The autumn sun beat down on the small town of Opal, Nevada, where she'd lived for 3 years with her late husband before the fever took him 6 months ago, leaving her with nothing but this failing ranch and memories that wouldn't feed her through the coming winter. She'd posted notices around town about the cow, her hands shaking as she wrote the words that meant admitting defeat, admitting she couldn't make it alone out here where the earth was hard and unforgiving. Samuel Wright had been riding through Opal on his way to check on his own spread when he saw the woman standing in the town square, one hand resting on a cow that looked about as tired as she did. He'd heard about the widow Mee from the general store owner, how she'd been struggling since her husband passed, how she was too proud to accept charity but too desperate to keep pretending everything was fine. Something about the way she held her shoulders back despite the defeat in her eyes made him slow his horse, made him want to know more about this woman who refused to crumble even when the world seemed determined to break her. Anna looked up when the shadow of horse and rider fell across her face. The man who dismounted was tall and lean, with sun-weathered skin and dark hair that curled slightly at his collar. He couldn't have been more than 28 or so, maybe a few years older than her own 24 years, and he had the look of someone who spent his life working the land. His brown eyes were kind, though, and when he tipped his hat to her, she saw something in his face that wasn't pity, which made all the difference. "Madam," he said, his voice low and steady, "I hear you're selling this cow." "I am," Anna replied, lifting her chin slightly. "She's a good animal, just needs better feeding than I can provide right now. She'll give good milk once she's fattened up some." Samuel walked around the cow, checking her over with practiced hands, though he'd already decided he was buying her before he'd even dismounted. The cow was thin and past her prime, not worth much to anyone, but he wasn't here for the cow. He was here because something in his chest had tightened when he saw this woman standing alone, selling off her last hope, and he couldn't ride past without doing something about it. "What are you asking for her?" he asked, straightening up to meet Anna's gaze. $15, she said quietly. It was less than the cow was worth even in her current state, and they both knew it. "I need it today." Samuel nodded slowly, reaching into his pocket. He pulled out a leather wallet and counted out the bills, but as he held them out to Anna, he found himself speaking words he hadn't planned. "I'll give you 20 for her, but I need someone to look after her for me. My ranch is about 5 miles north of here, and I could use help with the animals. Would you be willing to work for wages until you get back on your feet?" Anna's hand froze halfway to the money. Her green eyes searched his face, looking for the catch, the hidden meaning behind the offer. Men didn't just offer help to widows without expecting something in return, not in her experience. But this man's expression was open, honest, and she was too desperate to let pride make her stupid. "What kind of wages?" she asked carefully. "Room, board, and $30 a month," Samuel said. "There's a small house on the property where my foreman used to live before he moved on. It's yours if you want it. The work's honest, just helping with the livestock and the kitchen garden. My housekeeper left last month to care for her sister, so I've been managing alone, but I'm not much good at keeping a place livable." It was too generous, too convenient, and Anna felt tears prick at her eyes even as suspicion warred with hope in her chest. "Why would you do this? You don't even know me." Samuel shifted his weight, suddenly looking uncomfortable. The truth was, he didn't know why he was doing this, not really. He'd built his ranch from nothing over the past 6 years, working every daylight hour to turn a patch of Nevada scrubland into something profitable. He'd never been the type to take in strays or play hero. But standing here looking at Anna Mee, seeing the way she fought to keep her composure, he felt something shift in his chest. Maybe it was loneliness, maybe it was something else, but he wanted to help her. He wanted to see what she looked like when she smiled. "I know what it's like to have nothing," he said finally. "When I came out here, I had $20 to my name and a borrowed horse. Someone gave me a chance when they didn't have to, and I've been waiting for the right time to pay that forward. So what do you say, Mrs. Me? Will you come work for me?" Anna looked at the money in his hand, then at the cow, then back at his face. She thought about the empty ranch house waiting for her on the edge of town, the bills she couldn't pay, the winter coming fast. She thought about her husband Thomas, who'd promised her a good life out west, who died and left her alone in a place that didn't forgive mistakes or bad luck. She thought about pride and survival, and which one mattered more when you were down to your last dollar. "All right," she said, taking the money and immediately handing 15 of it back to him. "But I'm paying rent on that house from my wages. I won't take charity, Mr. Wright." "Just Samuel," he said, a small smile tugging at his mouth as he pocketed the returned money. "And you drive a hard bargain, Mrs. Me. When can you start?" "Tomorrow morning," Anna said. "I need to settle things with my landlord and pack my belongings." Samuel nodded, taking the cow's rope. "I'll come by with a wagon at dawn to help you move. Where are you staying?" "The old Miller place, east edge of town. The house with the blue door." "I know it," Samuel said, tipping his hat again. "I'll see you in the morning then, Mrs. Me, and thank you. You're doing me a real favor." Anna watched him lead the cow away, her mind spinning with everything that had just happened. She clutched the $20 in her hand, more money than she'd seen in months, and felt something like hope flutter in her chest for the first time since Thomas died. It was probably foolish to trust a stranger, to agree to live on his property and work for him, but foolishness was better than starving. She'd learned that much in her time as a widow. That night, Anna packed her few belongings by candlelight, her hands moving automatically while her mind raced. She owned so little now, just some clothes, a few cooking pots, Thomas's pocket watch, and the quilt her mother had made when she married. Everything else had been sold to pay debts or had belonged to the ranch she was leaving behind. She thought about Samuel Wright and his kind eyes, his too generous offer. Part of her waited for him to not show up in the morning, for it all to have been some cruel joke or misunderstanding. But another part of her, the part that had survived everything the past 6 months had thrown at her, believed he would come. Believed that maybe things were about to change. True to his word, Samuel arrived just as the sun was painting the sky pink and gold. He drove a sturdy wagon pulled by 2 horses, and when Anna opened the door, he was already climbing down to help. He didn't comment on how few boxes she had, just loaded them carefully into the wagon bed and offered his hand to help her up to the seat. The ride out to his ranch took almost an hour, following a dirt road that wound through scrubland dotted with sagebrush and the occasional juniper tree. Samuel pointed out landmarks as they rode, telling her about the area, about the challenges of ranching in Nevada where water was scarce and the summers brutal. Anna listened, studying him from the corner of her eye, trying to understand this man who changed her life with a simple transaction in the town square. "You never said what kind of ranch you run," she said as they crested a hill, and she saw buildings in the distance. "Cattle mostly, some horses," Samuel replied. "Nothing fancy, but it turns a decent profit. I've got about 200 head right now, planning to expand next spring if the winter's not too harsh." The ranch came into view properly as they descended the hill, and Anna felt her breath catch. It wasn't large by some standards, but it was well kept and clearly prosperous. The main house was a solid two-story structure built from local stone and timber, with a wide porch that wrapped around two sides. Several outbuildings dotted the property, including a large barn, a stable, a chicken coop, and a smaller house set a respectful distance from the main building. The land was fenced properly, and she could see cattle grazing in the distance, black shapes against the golden grass. "That's the foreman's house," Samuel said, pointing to the smaller building. "It's got 2 rooms, a decent stove, and I had it cleaned out last week. There's a well between the 2 houses that we share, and you're welcome to take vegetables from the garden behind the main house." Anna stared at the little house, her throat tight. It was more than she dared hope for, more than she deserved from a stranger. The building had a small porch and windows with real glass, and when Samuel helped her down and unlocked the door, she saw it had been furnished with a bed, a table, 2 chairs, and a rocking chair by the stone fireplace. It was simple but clean, and it was hers for as long as she worked here. "I'll help you bring your things in," Samuel said, already heading back to the wagon. They worked in comfortable silence, Samuel carrying the heavier boxes while Anna arranged her few possessions. The cow she'd sold was already in a small pen behind the barn, munching hay and looking better than she had in weeks. When everything was inside, Samuel lingered in the doorway, his hat in his hands. "I usually start work before dawn," he said. "But tomorrow I'll come by after breakfast to show you around, introduce you to the routine. For today, just settle in and make yourself comfortable. There's food in the main house if you're hungry. I left the door unlocked for you." "Thank you," Anna said, the words feeling inadequate for everything he'd done. "I won't disappoint you, Samuel. I'm a hard worker." "I don't doubt it," he said, and his smile was warm. "Welcome to the ranch, Anna." He left her then, and Anna stood in the doorway of her new home, watching him walk back to the main house with long, easy strides. She'd expected to feel afraid or uncertain, but instead she felt something she hadn't experienced in months: safe. She went back inside and began properly arranging her things, humming softly as she worked, thinking that maybe Nevada wasn't such an unforgiving place after all. Over the next few weeks, Anna fell into a routine that was both exhausting and satisfying. She woke before dawn to help Samuel feed the animals, muck out stalls, and check the fences. She learned that he ran his ranch with just the help of 2 day workers who came in for the heavy jobs, preferring to do most of the work himself. He taught her about the cattle, about reading the weather, about the 100 small tasks that kept a ranch running. In the afternoons, she tended the garden, preserved vegetables for winter, and cleaned the main house, which Samuel had indeed let fall into disarray. They worked well together, Anna discovered. Samuel was patient and never condescending, treating her like a partner rather than an employee. He listened when she had ideas and admitted when he didn't know something. In the evenings, they often ate dinner together, sitting on his porch and watching the sun set over the distant mountains. They talked about everything and nothing: their pasts, their hopes, the funny things the ranch cat did. Anna learned that Samuel had come west from Missouri after his parents died, that he'd worked as a ranch hand for 5 years before saving enough to buy this land, that he loved it here despite the hardness of the life. Samuel learned that Anna had married Thomas when she was 20, that they'd come to Nevada full of dreams that never quite materialized, that she loved to read, but hadn't owned a book in over a year. The next day, he gave her 3 novels from his own small collection, and the gratitude in her eyes made his heart skip. He was falling for her. Samuel realized one morning in late October as he watched her bottle feed a calf whose mother had rejected it. She was laughing as the calf butted her hand, demanding more milk, her red gold hair coming loose from its braid, her face lit with joy. She was beautiful, but it was more than that. She was strong and kind and quick-witted, and every day he found new reasons to admire her. Every day it got harder to remember she was his employee, that she was still grieving her husband, that he had no right to the feelings growing in his chest. Anna was having similar realizations. She'd noticed the way Samuel's face softened when he smiled, the gentle way he handled the animals, his quiet competence. She'd catch herself watching him work, admiring the strength in his arms, the way his hair fell across his forehead when he bent over a task. At night, alone in her little house, she felt guilty for these feelings. Thomas had only been gone 6 months. Wasn't it too soon to be thinking about another man? But her heart didn't seem to care about proper mourning periods or what people might think. The tension between them built slowly, in small moments and lingering glances. Samuel's hand on her back as he guided her past a skittish horse. Anna's fingers brushing his as she handed him a cup of coffee. The way they'd both reach for the same tool and freeze, inches apart, suddenly aware of each other's breathing. Neither spoke of it, both afraid to break the careful balance they'd found. Then came the first snow in early November, a surprise storm that blew in overnight and left everything blanketed in white. Anna woke to find her little stove had gone out and the house was freezing. She tried to relight it, but the wood was damp and wouldn't catch. Shivering in her coat and 2 blankets, she finally admitted defeat and hurried through the snow to the main house. Samuel answered her knock immediately, concern crossing his face when he saw her shaking from cold. "Come in, quickly. How long have you been without heat?" "I don't know, I just woke up," Anna said through chattering teeth. "I'm sorry to bother you, but I couldn't get the stove relit." "No bother at all," Samuel said, guiding her to the fireplace where a large fire crackled. "Sit here and warm up. I'll go check your stove." He was back 15 minutes later, stamping snow from his boots. "The chimney's blocked, probably a bird's nest. I'll fix it this morning, but it'll take a few hours. You'll stay here until it's done." Anna nodded, still huddled by the fire. Samuel disappeared into his kitchen and returned with a cup of hot coffee and a plate of breakfast. "Eat," he said gently. "You need to warm up from the inside, too." As Anna ate, feeling slowly returning to her fingers and toes, Samuel sat across from her, his own coffee in hand. The storm howled outside, rattling the windows, and she realized they were essentially snowed in together. The thought should have made her nervous, but instead she felt content, safe here in this warm house with this good man. "Tell me something," Samuel said after a while. "Are you happy here?" Anna looked up, surprised by the question. "Yes, happier than I've been in a long time. Why do you ask?" Samuel set down his coffee, his expression serious. "Because I need you to know that you're not obligated to stay if you're not. I know how you came here, what desperation looks like. If you want to leave, go somewhere else. I'll give you wages enough to make a fresh start. I don't want you to feel trapped." "I don't feel trapped," Anna said quietly. "I feel like I've been given a second chance. You saved my life, Samuel, whether you meant to or not. That day in town, I was at the end of everything. And you didn't just give me work, you gave me dignity. You treated me like I mattered. So yes, I'm happy here. Very happy." Something flickered in Samuel's eyes, something warm and hopeful. "I'm glad. Because I can't imagine this place without you anymore. You've made it feel like a home instead of just a place I work." They looked at each other across the small space, the fire crackling between them, and Anna felt her heart racing. She should look away, should maintain the professional distance they'd been so careful about. But she didn't want to. She was tired of being careful, tired of denying what she felt. "Samuel," she started, but he was already standing, moving toward her. "I know it's too soon," he said, kneeling beside her chair so their faces were level. "I know you're still mourning, and I don't want to take advantage or make you uncomfortable. But I need you to know that I care about you, Anna. More than an employer should, more than is probably wise. You don't have to do anything about it, I just needed to say it out loud." Anna reached out, her hand trembling slightly as she touched his face. His skin was warm, rough with morning stubble, and real in a way that made her heart ache. "It's not too soon," she whispered. "I thought it should be, but it's not. I care about you too, Samuel. You've been so good to me, and somewhere along the way, working beside you, sharing meals with you, I started to feel alive again. I started to feel like maybe I could have a future instead of just survival." Samuel turned his face into her palm, his eyes closing briefly. When he opened them again, they were bright with emotion. "Can I kiss you?" "Yes," Anna breathed, and then his lips were on hers, gentle and questioning. She kissed him back, her hand sliding into his hair, and felt something in her chest crack open. It wasn't like kissing Thomas, and she was grateful for that. This was new, different, its own thing entirely. This was Samuel, and it was perfect. They broke apart slowly, both breathing hard, and Samuel rested his forehead against hers. "I want to do this right," he said. "Court you properly, give you time, I want you to be sure." "I'm sure," Anna said, laughing softly, "but I appreciate the sentiment. Court me then, Samuel Wright. Show me what kind of suitor you are." He grinned, boyish and delighted, and kissed her again. Outside, the storm continued to rage, but inside they were warm and happy, discovering this new thing between them, this possibility of love and future and joy. The courting, as it turned out, was somewhat complicated by the fact that they lived 50 yards apart and worked together every day. But Samuel took it seriously, treating Anna with old-fashioned courtesy, asking permission before holding her hand, bringing her small gifts. A book from the general store in town, a hair ribbon, wildflowers preserved despite the winter cold. He told her stories about his childhood in Missouri, about the parents he'd loved and lost, about his dreams for the ranch. Anna shared her own stories, about growing up in California, about her marriage to Thomas, which had been friendly if not passionate, about her fear that she'd never be more than alone and desperate. "You're so much more than that," Samuel said one evening as they sat together on his porch, bundled in coats and sharing a blanket. "You're brave and strong and clever. You're kind to the animals, and you sing when you work, and you make the best biscuits I've ever tasted. You're everything good, Anna." She kissed him then, cold lips warming against each other, and whispered, "You make me believe that. You make me believe I deserve good things." "You deserve everything," he murmured against her mouth, "and I want to give it to you." December brought bitter cold and more snow, and also a problem. One of Samuel's neighbors, a man named Dutch Carson who owned the spread to the east, rode over to discuss grazing rights and saw Anna working in the barn. He cornered Samuel later, his expression unfriendly. "I heard you had a woman working here, but I didn't realize she was living on the property," Carson said, his tone accusatory. "That's not proper, right? People are going to talk." Samuel felt anger rise in his chest. "Mrs. Me is my employee and lives in the foreman's house. There's nothing improper about it. She's a young widow and you're an unmarried man," Carson pressed. "It doesn't look right. You should send her back to town or marry her." "My business is my own," Samuel said coldly, "and I'll thank you to keep your opinions to yourself." Carson left, but the interaction bothered Samuel more than he wanted to admit. Not because he cared what the man thought, but because Carson was right that people would talk, and that could hurt Anna's reputation. When he told her about the conversation that evening, she was furious. "How dare he?" she said, pacing Samuel's kitchen. "As if my living here is anyone's business but ours." "He's not wrong, though," Samuel said reluctantly. People will gossip, especially in a small town like Opal. I don't care for myself, but I don't want you hurt by it. Anna stopped pacing and looked at him. What are you saying? I'm saying maybe we should get married, Samuel said, then immediately shook his head. No, that came out wrong. I'm not proposing because of Carson or gossip. I'm saying that I was already planning to ask you. I've been working up the courage for weeks, and this just makes me realize I shouldn't wait. He crossed to her, taking both her hands in his. I love you, Anna. I think I started falling for you that first day in town, watching you stand there so brave and proud with nothing but a skinny cow and your dignity. Every day since has just made me more sure. I want to spend my life with you. I want to build this ranch into something bigger and pass it on to our children someday. I want to wake up next to you every morning and fall asleep with you every night. So, will you marry me? Not because of propriety or gossip, but because I love you and I think you love me too. Tears streamed down Anna's face, but she was smiling. I do love you. I love your kindness and your integrity and the way you treat everything and everyone with respect. I love working beside you and talking with you and kissing you. I love that you see me as an equal, that you gave me back my self-respect when I'd lost it. Yes, Samuel, I'll marry you. He pulled her into his arms, kissing her deeply, and she wrapped herself around him, pouring all her love and gratitude and joy into the embrace. When they finally separated, both laughing and crying, Samuel said, We'll go to town tomorrow and see the preacher, unless you want a big wedding. We can wait if you want to plan something. No, Anna said firmly. I don't need a big wedding. I just need you and a promise, and the sooner the better. They were married 3 days later in the small church in Opal, with the preacher's wife and the general store owner as witnesses. Anna wore her one good dress, dark green calico that brought out her eyes, and carried a small bouquet of winter greenery Samuel had gathered. Samuel wore his best suit and couldn't stop smiling as he said his vows, his voice strong and sure. When the preacher pronounced them husband and wife, Samuel kissed her with such tender passion that the preacher's wife sighed happily. They celebrated with dinner at the hotel restaurant, then drove back to the ranch as the sun was setting. Anna had moved her few belongings into the main house that morning, and as Samuel carried her over the threshold, she laughed with pure joy. Welcome home, Mrs. Wright, Samuel said, setting her down gently. It already was home, Anna replied, reaching up to kiss him. Now it's just official. Their wedding night was tender and sweet, both nervous and eager, learning each other in the flickering firelight. Samuel was gentle, patient, making sure Anna felt loved and cherished. Afterwards, they lay tangled together, talking softly about their future. I want to expand the herd next spring, Samuel said, his fingers tracing patterns on Anna's shoulder. Maybe breed some horses too. There's good money in horses if you can train them right. I'd like to expand the garden, Anna said. Maybe keep bees for honey. And I was thinking we could raise chickens for eggs to sell in town. We make a good team, Samuel said, kissing her forehead. We're going to build something real here, Anna, something that lasts. We already have, she whispered, and knew it was true. The winter passed in a blur of happiness. They worked together during the day, Samuel teaching Anna more about ranching, Anna bringing her own ideas and energy to the operation. In the evenings, they rayed together by the fire, played cards, talked about everything under the sun. In their bed, they discovered passion and comfort, the sweet intimacy of married life. When spring came, bringing wildflowers and newborn calves, Anna realized her monthly bleeding hadn't come. She waited another week to be sure, then told Samuel one evening as they watched the sunset. I think I'm pregnant, she said, her hand on her still flat stomach. Samuel's face went through several expressions. shock, joy, fear, then settling on pure happiness. Really? You're sure? Pretty sure. I'll go see the doctor in town next week to confirm, but I know my body. There's a baby coming. He pulled her into his arms, holding her tight, and she felt his heart racing against her cheek. A baby, our baby. God, Anna, I'm so happy I can barely breathe. Me too, she said, tears flowing freely. I didn't think I'd ever have this, ever have a family of my own. You have it now, Samuel promised. You have me and this baby and a home and a future. You have everything. The pregnancy progressed smoothly, Anna blooming with health as the summer heat rolled over Nevada. Samuel was attentive to the point of being comical, constantly worried she was working too hard, bringing her water every hour, insisting she rest in the afternoons. Anna tolerated his fussing with good humor, knowing it came from love. In late summer, Dutch Carson rode over again, this time with a different attitude. I heard congratulations are in order, he said, his tone friendlier than before. Marriage and a baby on the way. I apologize for my harsh words last winter, right? You clearly did right by the lady. Samuel accepted the apology stiffly, still not particularly liking the man, but Anna invited Carson to stay for lemonade, chatting pleasantly about ranching and weather until the man left in better spirits than he'd arrived. You didn't have to be nice to him, Samuel said after Carson had ridden off. He was rude about you. He apologized, Anna said with a shrug, and we have to live near him, might as well be friendly. Besides, I'm too happy to hold grudges. Samuel pulled her close, his hand on her swelling belly. You're a better person than me. No, Anna said, kissing him softly. Just a happier one, thanks to you. Their daughter was born in October, a year after Anna had sold her last cow and met the man who would change her life. The birth was long and difficult, attended by a midwife from town and with Samuel pacing frantically in the other room. But when he finally heard the baby's cry and was allowed in to meet her, all the fear melted away. She's perfect, he breathed, staring down at the tiny red-faced infant in Anna's arms. You're perfect. I can't believe she's ours. What should we name her? Anna asked, exhausted but glowing. They discussed names for months without deciding. But now, looking at his daughter, Samuel knew. Grace. Because that's what brought you to me, grace and good fortune. Grace, right, Anna tested, then smiled. It's perfect. Baby Grace was colicky and demanded constant attention, but neither parent minded. Samuel proved to be a devoted father, walking the floor with her at night, singing off-key lullabies, marveling at every tiny finger and toe. Anna nursed her and rocked her and felt her heart expand to sizes she hadn't known were possible. The ranch continued to prosper. They expanded the herd as planned, bought 2 mares for breeding, and Anna's garden and chicken operation brought in extra income. By Grace's first birthday, they'd paid off the last of Samuel's land debts and even had money saved. They celebrated quietly, just the 3 of them, with a cake Anna had baked and a small toy horse Samuel had carved for Grace. Remember when we met? Anna said that evening, Grace asleep on her shoulder. I had nothing. I was selling my last cow just to eat. And I was alone in a house too big for one person, Samuel added, his arm around her waist, wondering if this ranch was all I'd ever have. Look at us now, Anna marveled. We have everything. Samuel kissed her temple. I'd like to have more if you're willing. More children, I mean. Grace should have siblings. Anna smiled. I'd like that too. A house full of children and noise and life. They had their wish. 2 years after Grace was born, Anna delivered a son they named Samuel Jr., called Junior to avoid confusion. He was an easier baby than Grace had been, content and smiley, and Grace was instantly smitten with her little brother. Samuel Sr. walked around grinning for weeks, unable to believe his good fortune. The years rolled on, bringing changes and challenges. A drought one summer that killed some cattle, a particularly harsh winter that tested their endurance. But through it all, Samuel and Anna faced everything together, their love deepening and strengthening. They added a third child, another son named Thomas after Anna's first husband, which Samuel suggested without hesitation. "He was part of your story," Samuel said when Anna protested it might be odd. "Without him, you wouldn't have been in Opal that day. I can honor his memory." Anna loved him even more for that generosity of spirit, for understanding that her past wasn't something to erase, but to acknowledge and accept. By the time Grace was 10, the ranch had tripled in size. They employed 3 full-time hands and seasonal workers during busy times. Samuel had built an addition onto the house, giving each child their own room and adding a proper dining room. Anna's garden was legendary in Opal, and people came from miles around to buy her vegetables and honey. They'd become pillars of the community, hosting church gatherings and helping neighbors when times were tough. One evening in late spring, with the children playing outside and dinner simmering on the stove, Anna stood on the porch watching her family. Grace was teaching her brothers how to rope a fence post, her red gold hair, so like Anna's, gleaming in the sunset. Samuel was working with one of the horses in the corral, his movements patient and sure. The land stretched out around them, golden and green and alive. Samuel finished with the horse and came to join her, slipping an arm around her waist. They stood in comfortable silence, watching their children play. "Do you ever think about that day?" Anna asked softly. "The day you bought my cow, all the time," Samuel admitted. "I think about how different my life would be if I'd ridden past, if I'd been too busy or too worried about propriety to stop. I think about how close I came to missing you. I think about what possessed you to not just buy the cow but offer me work," Anna said. "You could have just taken the animal and left. Why didn't you?" Samuel was quiet for a moment, considering. "Honestly, I don't know. Something about you called to me made me want to know you, help you. I told myself it was just kindness, paying forward the help I'd received. But I think even then, some part of me knew you were going to be important to me." "Best impulse you ever had," Anna said, turning to kiss him. "Second best," Samuel corrected, kissing her back. "The best was asking you to marry me." They were interrupted by Grace running up, breathless and excited. "Mama, Papa Jr. roped the post on his first try. You have to come see." They let their daughter pull them off the porch, laughing as they joined the boys to admire Junior's accomplishment. Thomas was demanding to try next, and Grace was already positioning the rope in his hands, every bit the bossy older sister. Samuel caught Anna's eye over their children's heads, and the look they shared said everything. This is what we built. This is what that day in Opal became. Later that night, after the children were asleep and they lay in their bed with the windows open to the cool night air, Samuel said, "I've been thinking about something." Anna was drowsy, comfortable in his arms. "That foreman's house where you first lived, it's just sitting empty. What if we fixed it up, used it for the hands? They're sleeping in the bunkhouse, but one of them is talking about getting married. They could live there, start their own family." Anna smiled in the darkness. "I like that idea. That little house was the first place I felt safe after Thomas died. It would be good to see it used for happiness again." "Maybe we could tell them the story," Samuel said. "About how you came here with nothing, how we fell in love, how we built all this together. It might give them hope, knowing that good things can come from hard times." "Is that what you think our story is?" Anna asked. "Good things from hard times." "I think our story is about grace," Samuel said, using their daughter's name deliberately. "About unexpected blessings and second chances. about two people who found each other when they needed it most and built something beautiful together. Anna kissed him, long and deep and full of love. "Tell me again how you felt that day, seeing me in the town square." Samuel knew she didn't need reassurance, that this was just a game they played, retelling their origin story to each other like a favorite fairy tale. But he indulged her, as he always did. "I saw a woman standing in the dust with her last cow, too proud to beg but desperate enough to sell her only asset. And I thought she was the bravest thing I'd ever seen. I thought I wanted to know her, wanted to see what she looked like when she wasn't carrying the weight of the world on her shoulders. So I bought the cow and I offered her work and she said yes, and my whole life changed." "Mine too," Anna whispered. "You saved me that day, Samuel." "In every way a person can be saved." "We saved each other," he corrected. "I was lonely, even if I didn't want to admit it. This ranch was just a place I worked until you made it a home. You gave me a reason for all of it, a purpose beyond just surviving." They fell asleep like that, wrapped around each other, secure in their love and their life. The seasons continued their eternal cycle. Grace grew into a beautiful, headstrong young woman who could outride and outrope most of the ranch hands. Junior was quieter, thoughtful, with a gift for working with the horses. Thomas, the youngest, was all mischief and charm, keeping everyone entertained with his antics. Samuel and Anna watched their children grow with pride and occasional terror at how fast time was passing. When Grace turned 16, she started receiving attention from the young men in the area. Samuel was predictably protective, glowering at any boy who dared look at his daughter too long. Anna had to remind him that he'd been only 28 when they married, hardly ancient, and Grace would make her own choices when the time came. "I just don't want her to settle," Samuel said one night. "I want her to find what we have." "She will," Anna assured him. "We've shown her what real love looks like. She won't accept anything less." They were right. Grace eventually married at 20 to a young rancher from 2 counties over, a good man who clearly adored her and treated her as an equal partner. Samuel walked her down the aisle with tears in his eyes, and Anna cried through the entire ceremony. But they were happy tears, knowing their daughter was beginning her own adventure. Junior and Thomas would eventually marry too, bringing wives to the ranch, and suddenly the house that had seemed so big was full again with new daughters-in-law and, eventually, grandchildren. Samuel and Anna settled into grandparenthood with joy, spoiling the little ones and passing on their knowledge to the next generation. On their 20th wedding anniversary, Samuel took Anna back to Opal, to the spot in the town square where they'd first met. The town had grown over the years, but the square was largely unchanged. They stood where Anna had stood with her cow, where Samuel had dismounted and changed both their lives. "What are you thinking?" Samuel asked, his arm around her waist. They were both older now, touches of silver in their hair, lines around their eyes from years of sun and laughter. "I'm thinking about that desperate woman who stood here with nothing," Anna said. "I barely recognize her now. She was so scared, so certain she'd failed at everything." "She was also brave and strong," Samuel said. "She just needed someone to remind her." "And along came a cowboy with kind eyes and a generous heart," Anna finished, leaning into him, "who not only bought her last cow but gave her his ranch, his name, his life." "Best trade I ever made," Samuel said, kissing her temple. "One skinny cow for a lifetime of love. I'd say I got the better end of the deal," Anna laughed. "We both did." They stood there a while longer, remembering, before heading back to the ranch that was truly theirs now, full of children and grandchildren and life. The land that had seemed so harsh and unforgiving when Anna first came to Nevada was home now, beautiful in its austerity, generous in its way. As they drove home in their new motor car, a recent splurge that Samuel was still learning to drive, Anna said, "Do you think people believe our story? When we tell it, I mean. Does it sound too good to be true?" "Maybe," Samuel admitted, "but it's our true. Every word of it happened just the way we say. You sold your last cow, I bought it, and then I fell in love with you and couldn't imagine my life without you in it. So I offered you work, and then my home, and then my heart. What's hard to believe about that?" "When you put it that way, nothing," Anna said, smiling. "It's just a simple story about two people who needed each other and were lucky enough to figure that out." "The best stories usually are," Samuel said. They made it home just as the sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink and gold. Their grandchildren ran out to greet them, Junior's two boys and Thomas's little girl, all shouting and laughing and demanding to be picked up. Grace's husband had brought her over for dinner, and she was setting the long table on the porch while her mother-in-law helped. The whole family gathered for the meal, 3 generations sitting together, passing plates and telling stories and teasing each other. Samuel looked around the table, at his wife still beautiful beside him, at his children grown and thriving, at his grandchildren sticky and giggling, and felt his heart swell with gratitude. After dinner, as the children played and the younger couples cleaned up, Samuel and Anna slipped away to their favorite spot, a bench they'd placed on a small rise overlooking the ranch. The house glowed with lamplight below them, and they could hear the faint sounds of laughter and music. Someone was playing the piano, probably Grace, and the notes drifted up to them on the evening breeze. "This is what I imagined," Samuel said softly. "That day I bought your cow. I didn't know it consciously, but this is what I wanted. A full house, a thriving ranch, a woman I love beside me, children and grandchildren carrying on what we started. This is everything." Anna rested her head on his shoulder, their fingers intertwined. "I couldn't have imagined this. I'd given up on happiness, on having a real life. I thought I'd just survive until I didn't. And then you appeared like something out of a story and refused to let me disappear." "I couldn't," Samuel said simply. "You were too bright to let the world snuff you out. I just gave you a place to shine." "We gave each other that," Anna corrected. "I made your house a home, and you made me remember how to live instead of just exist. We did this together, every bit of it." They sat in comfortable silence as the stars began to appear, the same stars that had shone on them that first night Anna spent on the ranch, uncertain and hopeful. The same stars that had witnessed their first kiss in the snow, their wedding night, the births of their children. The stars that would shine on their grandchildren and great-grandchildren, bearing witness to the legacy of love they'd built. "You ever regret it?" Samuel asked suddenly. "Marrying me so quickly, tying your life to mine when you barely knew me?" Anna turned to look at him, her eyes soft in the starlight. "Not for a single moment. Not even when things were hard, not even when I was exhausted with babies and work, not even in the darkest times. You've been my partner, my best friend, my love for 20 years, and I'd do it all again in a heartbeat. Every moment that led me to that town square, to selling that cow, to meeting you, every moment was worth it." Samuel pulled her close, kissing her with the passion and tenderness that had sustained them through 2 decades of marriage. "I love you, Anna Wright, today, tomorrow, and for all the rest of my days." "And I love you," Anna whispered against his lips, "my cowboy, my husband, my heart." They stayed there until the music stopped and the house began to quiet, until Junior came looking for them to say goodnight, his sons already asleep in his arms. They walked back down the hill together, hand in hand, to the home they'd built and the life they'd made. In the years that followed, they grew old together as they'd promised they would. Samuel's hair went fully silver, and Anna's face gained the lines of a life well lived. They slowed down gradually, letting their sons take over more of the ranch work, but they never stopped working entirely. Samuel still rode out to check the fence lines well into his 70s, and Anna still tended her garden, though she now had a granddaughter-in-law to help. They celebrated their 30th anniversary, then their 40th, surrounded by a family that had grown beyond their wildest dreams. Grace had 4 children now. Junior had 3, and Thomas had 5. The grandchildren were starting to have children of their own, great-grandchildren who called them Grammy and Gramps, and climbed into their laps for stories. The story they told most often was their own, the tale of the widow selling her last cow and the cowboy who bought it. The children never tired of hearing how Grammy Anna had stood in the town square with nothing but pride and courage, how Gramps Samuel had seen something special in her and offered her not just work but hope. They loved hearing about the first dinner, the first kiss in the snow, the proposal that was almost an accident, the wedding with only 4 people present. And then what happened? The youngest ones would always ask, even though they knew the answer. "Then we lived happily ever after," Anna would say, smiling at Samuel across whatever room they were in. "We built this ranch together, raised our children, and loved each other every single day." "That's it," the children would sometimes ask, disappointed by the simplicity. "That's everything," Samuel would correct gently. "Loving someone every day, building a life together, that's the grandest adventure there is." When Samuel was 79 and Anna 75, they took one last trip to Opal together, to the town square where it all began. The town was different now, modernized, but the square remained. They stood there holding hands, 2 old people remembering the young, desperate, and hopeful versions of themselves who'd met here so long ago. "Thank you," Anna said softly. "For what?" Samuel asked. "For seeing me. For stopping that day instead of riding past. For taking a chance on a widow with nothing to offer." "You had everything to offer," Samuel said, his voice rough with emotion. "You just didn't know it yet, and I'm the one who should be thanking you. You took a bigger chance trusting a stranger, coming to work for me, letting me love you. You made my life worth living, Anna. You made everything matter." They kissed there in the square, 2 old people still deeply in love, still partners in every way that counted. A few people walking past smiled at the sight, recognizing the Wrights, knowing their story. Everyone in Opal knew about Samuel and Anna, about how their love story had started right there in that square 40-some years ago. Samuel passed away peacefully in his sleep at age 82, with Anna beside him in the bed they'd shared for over 50 years. His last words to her were, "Best deal I ever made." And she knew he was talking about the cow, about that first day, about everything that had followed. Anna followed him 2 years later, her heart finally giving out after 84 years. She died in the same bedroom, surrounded by children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren, all of them grieving but grateful for the life she'd lived and the legacy she'd left. Her last words were, "Tell him I'm coming," and there wasn't a dry eye in the room. They were buried side by side on the rise where their favorite bench still sat, overlooking the ranch they'd built together. The headstone Samuel had chosen for himself years before read, Samuel Wright, beloved husband, father, and rancher. He saw grace and chose love. Anna's, chosen by her children, read Anna Me Wright, beloved wife, mother, and heart of the ranch. She made everything home. The ranch continued on through the generations, passed down to their children and their children's children. The story of Samuel and Anna became family legend, told and retold until it took on an almost mythical quality. But those who'd known them, who'd seen them work side by side and grow old together, knew the truth was even better than the legend. They'd really loved each other that much. They'd really built everything from nothing. They'd really lived happily ever after. And it all started with a widow selling her last cow and a cowboy who couldn't ride past without stopping. Years later, Grace's oldest grandson, preparing to take over the ranch, asked his grandmother about Samuel and Anna. She was ancient now, well into her 90s, the last surviving child of the couple who'd started it all. What was their secret? He asked. How did they make it work for so long? Grace smiled, her eyes distant with memory. They saw each other, really saw each other. Not just who they were in that moment, but who they could be together. Papa saw that Mama was brave and strong, and Mama saw that Papa was kind and honorable. And they chose each other every day, even when it was hard, especially when it was hard. That's all? Her grandson asked. That's everything, Grace said, echoing her father's words from long ago. Love isn't complicated. It's seeing someone fully and choosing them anyway. It's working together, laughing together, facing life together. That's what they did, and that's why this ranch, this family exists. Because one day, a cowboy saw a woman who needed help and decided to give her everything. And she saw a lonely man who needed a home and gave him that. They saved each other, and in doing so, they created all of this. She gestured around the ranch, still thriving, still full of life and cattle and horses and family. This is their legacy. Not just the land or the livestock, but the love. That's what they passed down to us. The knowledge that real love is partnership, is choosing each other, is building something together that lasts beyond your own lifetime. Her grandson nodded, understanding. He'd heard the stories all his life, but only now, preparing to take on the responsibility of the ranch, did he truly grasp what his great-grandparents had accomplished. They'd taken nothing and made it everything. They'd taken desperation and turned it into hope. They'd taken a chance encounter in a dusty town square and turned it into a dynasty of love. And all because Samuel Wright couldn't ride past a brave woman selling her last cow. All because he'd offered her not just money for an animal, but dignity, work, and eventually his heart. All because Anna Mee had been brave enough to say yes, to trust a stranger, to believe she deserved a second chance. The story lived on, told to each new generation, a reminder that the best things in life often come from unexpected places. That kindness creates ripples far beyond the initial gesture. That love, real love, can transform everything. The ranch still stands today, over a century after that day in Opal, still owned by descendants of Samuel and Anna, still thriving. And in the town square, now a historical district, there's a plaque commemorating the spot where their story began. It reads simply, "On this spot in 1883, Samuel Wright bought a cow from Anna Mee and changed both their lives forever." Their ranch and their love story live on as testament to the power of compassion, courage, and choosing to see the best in each other. Tourists sometimes stop to rate it, to take pictures, charmed by the romantic notion of a cowboy and a widow finding love in the Old West. But for the Wright family, it's not romance or fiction. It's their history, their foundation, the root from which their entire family tree grew. And sometimes, on quiet evenings when the ranch is settling in for the night, if you stand in just the right spot on the rise where Samuel and Anna used to sit, some say you can still feel them there. Two souls who found each other when they needed it most, who built a life and a legacy that would outlast them by generations, who proved that sometimes the end of one thing is just the beginning of something far better. All because a desperate woman sold her last cow, and a kind man decided to buy it and give her his whole heart instead.